I like that lawn move quick. That's very good. I like that, Rob. It really is it's a pleasure to be here, and it's an honor. It's an honor to have an opportunity to actually shake hands with each one of you who have come so far in advancing yourselves towards this career in a very important job in public service. So I have some prepared remarks. I have two brief things I want to say before I start the remarks. Number one, I got a telephone call at home this morning from a very old friend who in fact has been through your program before. And in his message to me, he said two things. He said, one, keep it short. Two, don't bore them, whatever you do. Unfortunately, I had already written the speech when I received this telephone call. So I'm not sure that I can pledge that it's going to be very, very brief, although I think it's not long. And I hope it doesn't bore you. I do want to talk to you about some things that I think we all share in common in the work that we do on behalf of the citizens of this state. And I have in that way some remarks about, and don't roll your eyes back when you hear this, some history. Okay. I know when I talk to people, sometimes if I say that word, people start to flee for the exits. Just a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. The other thing I wanted to tell you briefly before I start this speech that I've got typed out is that my printer started to fail this morning as I was printing it. So I think I've got this on paper in a form in which I'm going to be able to read it. But if I stumble here and there, I think you'll know why. Let me start, and we'll get through. Good morning. I'm here today to congratulate you on your achievement and on your service to our state. I have a tremendous respect for you. The nature of what you do in your new roles as correctional officers may be said simply to put you squarely in Vermont's criminal justice system, a system with which I have some familiarity myself. I'm grateful for the work that you have set upon to do. You and I both work in the criminal justice system, and there are some similarities between what you do and what I do. As I said to a law enforcement group last fall, when we go to work, you wear a uniform and I wear a robe. In that sense, we look different. But in a way, we are the same. When we do our jobs well and properly, justice is served. In saying that, we must recognize that we have set the bar very high for ourselves, and that's a good thing. That, in fact, is what your training has been about. Your training has been about the rules and the procedures that are followed in the correction system. It has also, I think, been about the law, the processes that are followed in the courts and how the defendants interact with the court system. That they are treated with fairness in our system is very important. I see that you have many hours of training. I have seen an outline of your coursework. I'm impressed in reviewing your coursework with the emphasis on what I would call professionalism, something that Dr. McGlory was referring to earlier. Professionalism is a funny word in a sense because it can have a different meaning to different people. But let me tell you how I define professionalism. It is the quality of a person reflected in these traits. It is someone who first and foremost is trained. It is someone who is principled. It is a person who is disciplined in the way that they do their work. It is a person who is a good listener. It is someone who has and exercises good judgment and common sense. It's a person who knows the rules. It's a person who communicates well. It's a person who takes responsibility for their actions. And finally, it is a person with integrity. That is, a whole person, upright, honest, and sincere. The important thing is that you would not be sitting here if you did not demonstrate these qualities. But additionally, I see an emphasis on all of this in the objectives of your training. The training is important to learn and to maintain your skills because you must do the work day in and day out, applying equally the skill and the knowledge you have obtained. And there may be moments of decision when your training and know-how will be called upon in the flash of an instant. Of course, the training is to meet the challenges also of your job. Included in the list of coursework are the kinds of challenges I was interested to see that you will be dealing with. Challenges you will have to address, like these topics identified in the outline of your coursework. Contraband and searches, drug identification and abuse, self-harm and suicide prevention and intervention, offender grievance and discipline, conflict of interest avoidance, first aid, use of force, sexual harassment, and discipline and segregation. And there is in your coursework reference to another item that in particular caught my eye: due process. General background. This is a rule dating all the way back to the Magna Carta, and this country adopted it in part because of the mistreatment of the colonists by the king before the Revolution. Here's the history part. It's not long, but hang on with me. If we think about what the colonists 230 years ago, this can be very vivid. It's really not that long ago. I don't think it's that long ago. 230 years ago, this is what the colonists were up against. You can understand why we follow these rules for holding people accountable for their actions in court. The principle of due process of law is expressed in the Declaration of Independence. It was intended to mean that the government must use fair procedures in performing its function. The historical context of it is this: the King of England had harmed the colonists in a way that led to the Revolution. In the Declaration, there's a long list of the way in which the king had harmed the colonists, but two of them I want to read to you, and they say, the king has made judges, that's the robe, dependent on his will alone. The judges were fixing the trial. The king was fixing the trials by bribing the judges. This is what was going on. It also says, he has sent, that's the king, his officers to harass us. This is in this Declaration of Independence. Now, you might recall that British soldiers at times occupied homes and dwellings of American colonists. But there was also something else that they used, and it was called a general warrant. This is similar to, and this is what where our arrest warrants, where our search warrants come from. But this was not specific. It was called a general warrant. And what it in fact empowered the police to do was to search people at their businesses and their homes indiscriminately, without any specific or articulated purpose, frequently targeting, incidentally, individuals who were critical of the king. So this is the foundation of where we are today, of what the laws are about this concept of due process say to us today. It is basic to the story of why we set the bar so high for ourselves, for what you do and what I do. When I think about it, it helps to remind me of the importance of following a uniform set of rules, not arbitrary or unfair. Rules like those that you have been taught to abide by in your coursework here. This is what I would call the rule of law. In 1777, 1 year after that document I read to you from, the Vermont Constitution was signed. 1 year later, the Vermont Constitution. And in there, it shouldn't be a surprise, in our Constitution, this still exists today. This is an active document that drives our decisions on our courts today. In there, it includes an emphasis on the need to balance the power of state government against the rights of individuals. It says, Chapter 1, Article 10, a person has a right to be heard and by counsel in a criminal trial, to have a trial by jury, and cannot be compelled to give evidence against himself. So I am telling you about all of this in a way to again emphasize that it's a very high bar that has been set for us who serve the interests of justice in this state, in this country, in this state. It's a very high bar that these founding documents set for us. But it's because we hold ourselves, you and I, to such a high standard that we have a free society and a criminal justice system that is the envy of the world and not the scorn, as in some places. Corrections and correctional officers are an integral part of the criminal justice system. You and I must each work to meet this high standard. That we respect and follow the rules is fundamental to our work. And let me add here that in the first instance, the bar must be set by the people with authority. Each of you will have a role to play in overseeing the lives of others. It is in this way that it is extremely important that you abide by the rule of law. Finally, working to meet high standards is perhaps even more important and more difficult at times of financial pressure and economic downturn. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we in the judicial branch, like the Department of Corrections, have not escaped the financial challenge that state government has faced this year. And it is for that reason that it is important that we collaborate, as the Commissioner was saying, to find solutions to problems that we share in the administration of the criminal justice system. In some ways we have already done so, and in this I must acknowledge the work of Commissioner Rob Hoffman. I will say that in my dealings with him on our common concerns, he is a person of integrity, who is thoughtful, and with skill has dedicated himself to addressing the problems faced by corrections, as these problems stretch across the branches of state government and affect the administration of justice. His dedication to public service and his leadership is a model for you to follow. It should be clear by now that the theme of my remarks today is professionalism and dedication to the ideal of service to Vermont. So, I say welcome to the criminal justice system, and I do so with appreciation for your commitment to face the challenges ahead, respectful of the traditional ideals of our state, of your training, and for the fact that you have already accomplished so much and will do more in service of the interests of justice for all Vermonters. Thank you very much.